Welcome to Yell, Fight, Sooie, college football from three friendly-ish rivals.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday, September 29th. I'm Andy Tomchesson. That's James Christopher. And there in his handsome little headset, pretending to be on Star Trek, I guess, is Scott McIntyre.
Yeah, I was trying to get the little chevron right here, but I didn't have time this morning to get it iron going, so my bad.
Fashion tips.
The red shirt with the Star Trek chevron.
No, that means you die, right?
Like exactly what it means.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
If we're doing fashion tips, we're going to talk about football. This must be Yell, Fight, Sooie. Gentlemen, good morning. Jim, you're in St. Angelo remotely, operating off the wonderful invention of Al Gore. We appreciate that.
I'm in tech country, and boy, I heard about it all night last night at the bar. So yeah,
tech has a country.
Apparently,
I know they have syphilis.
This is what I'm learning.
So you're in syphilis country. Got it.
Again,
that's what they mean when they tell you that, right? This is tech country. Oh, thank you. I won't touch any of your
burns
women.
when I pee. Good to know.
Do they hand the penicillin out with the beers, or is that an after thing?
No, now it's an after thing. It used to be part of it, but now you have to ask for it. It's like everything else in this country. Nothing's free anymore.
Thanks, Brandon, or something. I don't know what that means. Anyway, we're here to talk about college football and not anything else because we never go off trail on this show. We've got games to talk about from last week. We've got games coming up. Scott's team and my team are actually playing each other in a brunch special this weekend. We'll talk about that. And more realignment craziness, evidently, is coming out. And Jim is not a happy man about it. So we'll talk about that. But starting off, Jim, you survived Baylor. I know it was tough there for a minute.
Tough sledding.
Only up, 50-6 or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was nice to pace those guys. I mean, for lots of reasons, I will never I will never get off the belief that they should not be allowed to play men's sports there at all, period. Because it isn't just when they're raping women, they're cutting the heads off basketball players. I mean, let's be honest, it's a colored history for that Christian school.
I mean, don't forget that the baseball team actually skinned a live cat.
Yeah, I forget.
For motivation.
I'm just a dog person, so I don't think about that one so much, but
it's up there.
It's up
there. Our friends at Peter are not happy.
It was very, very nice to see just this ultimately dominant win. Longhorns are 4-0. You can't hate anything about that, particularly after beating again. Not only has Baylor are they awful people, but it's also been they've had the Longhorns number for a while. So it's nice to have also kind of, as they do the farewell tour, remind everybody who they are out the door.
I am a little bit curious about what's happened to Dave Aranda, because I think regardless of his school affiliation, I think he's a good coach. He's had a little bit of success there, but after that success, last season and especially this season have not gone the way he would have scripted it, certainly. I'm wondering if his ceiling is really defensive coordinator or if something else is going on in Baylor that's making it difficult for him to win or more difficult for him to win. And Scott, I'm interested in your take on that.
Yeah, it seems like there's more than one thing there because Dave Aranda is not a bad coach, right? He's really not. I think from what I've seen, they've mismanaged the transfer portal somewhat. His numbers, he's lost quality players to the transfer portal and not staying on top of that. And there's just not a lot of creativity from what I've seen out of Baylor. I think it is headed in the wrong direction. If I was a Baylor alum, I would be concerned, but I'm not.
If you're a Baylor alum,
so I'm not
in the state house as the AG.
If I was a Baylor alum, I would be somewhere right now, probably working under Sarah Huckabee Sanders, doing terrible manipulative things to get rid of Freedom of Information Acts.
You'd also be desperately trying to get a Cordoba and a Papado to come to Waco to promise your recruits several years.
Absolutely. Well, I want a Taco John's there, really, to be able to tell my recruits that, hey, we got a Taco John's. All right.
They do have a Twin Peaks. So, people have been shot there.
Oh, well, I mean, nothing like a Twin Peaks in a good old Baptist town, brother. Let me tell you something. That's what you need right there. Having been the one of the three of us that was raised Baptist can tell you that there is nothing no better way than to ensure your liquor will not be drank than if you invite more than one Baptist over to hang out, because they'd never drink in front of each other.
That's right.
If you only invite one over, all your liquor's gone. So watch out.
They dance.
And they dance. Your sister looks good. Get out of here, Bob. You've had too many. No, but I think Dave Aranda's got to be on the hot seat. No, he just simply has to be. Baylor had it going in the right direction from a wins and losses standpoint, if nothing else. And they had never been a great powerhouse, right? We never think of Baylor as a great powerhouse before Art Briles. After Art Briles, he put them on winning ways, and they've been trying to hang on to that since. And if Dave Aranda's headed in the wrong direction, they've got too much money tied into Baylor for Dave Aranda to be around there for a long time. So his seat's hot, especially with all the realignment and watching other teams leave, and you're hearing Big 12 and Texas is going away and Oklahoma's going away, and yeah, we'll see.
I got to think, for if you're a Baylor fan, you are, and probably several other schools in the Big 12, there's a little bit of what just happened because just over the last couple of years, because there was a real world where the Big 12 was going to cease to exist for a brief moment with all of this. Yeah. And there were schools like Baylor that were worried about being on the outside looking in. And they've got to stay in the Big 12. And I am on record saying the Big 12 is probably going to be a decent football conference to watch, not unlike the Pac or the WAC used to be. Mm-hmm. Not even the Pac; they don't exist anymore. But with Texas exiting, probably with a championship on their belts, although upset alert in Austin maybe this weekend, and OU going with them, the luster, surviving in the Big 12. If you win the Big 12, I think it's great. You're going to be guaranteed a playoff spot when that expands. There's good things happening. But if you're not that team, or maybe those top two teams out of a Big 12, it's a long way down. And I don't know that Baylor, I don't know how they stay at the top of that without luck, coaching, and opportunity happening. And if Aranda's not the guy, Scott, I think you're right. I think it's a move that has to be made a little bit. We have talked a lot about Baylor, Jim, unless you got a few more digs to get in.
No, I just think, Andy, you'll remember well when the Big 12 was formed in the first place, Baylor was not part of the plan, and they were pushed on it by having a Baylor grad for a governor. I do think this will be the end of them. We all know it's coming, and they will. I don't think that when it becomes conference musical chairs, they will not have a chair.
Yeah, Ann Richards. I actually miss her.
How do you?
It's good to see your governor riding a motorcycle down the highway. Our current governor could not do that. He'd be a sidecar guy.
Or Toad.
Hold for laughter. Hold for laughter. All right.
Tom Cheston, you can reach him at andy.tomcheston@gmail.com if you have any comments.
I can look at my Twitter followers. Right now, it's a live count and they're dropping. Scott, Arkansas.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the governor. Oh, no, sorry. Okay, wrong. Sorry. Okay.
2 weeks of pain. Although,
completely different.
I will say, as an AM fan, knowing who our next opponent is, you've got a lot of our fans really, really scared after the performance you put up against LSU this past week. I know it's disappointing to lose 2 games in a row in the way that you lost them, but I'm
an Arkansas fan, so I'm accustomed to doing these things.
What are the takeaways from the loss to LSU? And if you can, what are the positives you might have seen? Because I know you've been kind of down on them for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so obviously a loss is a loss is a loss. You don't like that. And, you can say moral victory or whatever you would like to say, but it's a much better performance from the team after BYU. BYU was a letdown in which you had 14 penalties and twice held double-digit leads at different points in the game and gave those up. Against LSU, it was certainly a different story. It was a different team. They looked different. The offensive line still struggled at times. When they struggled very much, and it was 3 and out. But when they didn't struggle, they really started getting a push. LSU was completely confabulated That is a word. I'm going to make it up now. But they were completely confabulated in the first half, and they couldn't move the football. That's very much a testament to what the Arkansas defense was doing, because LSU had been running through every defense like that they saw like a hot knife through butter. So signs of life, lots of hope. The problem is when you have a defense and a defensive coordinator that loves to pressure, right? Lots of pressure. If you get caught on the wrong side of that pressure, then you give up 34 points in the last 35 minutes of the game, like we did. That's the issue. So sometimes it's going to look like a Jekyll and Hyde defense from series to series because of the amount of pressure they send out there. But all in all, a much better performance, enough to give people hope, because that's what this team does. But they still have not. They've not bought me in. They've not got me back yet. No.
And I will tell you, and we'll talk about this a little bit at the end of the show, but KJ Jefferson once again has a lot of A&M fans scared because of the passes he was completing downfield and the way he tended to command the game against LSU in spurts.
If he had receivers that could hold on to the freaking football on a consistent basis, he would scare a lot of people. But it's not really that fearsome when your guy scrambles out and then hits a guy wide open 20 yards down the field who looks like Edward Penis Hands trying to catch the freaking football. We all over the place. Yeah, we don't need that. So I need people that'll catch the football.
This is not Let's Get To Live last Wednesday. We don't need to go down the sausage.
No more than just his hands. Just his hands.
More appropriate might be a necessary roughness reference here. Don't throw it to stone hands.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Okay. I'll try to keep that in mind. Edward Stonehands just doesn't have the same ring, but I'll give it a shot.
His character's name was Featherstone. Also, the actor was the linebacker in The Program, a movie I unfortunately watched over the last week. It has not aged well.
Yeah, I bet it hasn't.
But a young Christy Swanson, with brunette Christy Swanson at that. Not a bad
Gee whiz, Darnell. Ugh. That's a real line from Holly Berry. Gee whiz, Darnell. What? Huh?
There aren't good football movies.
They just don't write them like that anymore.
Aren't good football movies. There's great baseball movies. There's no good football movies. I will die on that hill. Back to LSU, Arkansas, though. So my takeaway from watching a good chunk of that game, I think Arkansas looked much better than they did against BYU. I think LSU is not quite as good as people think they are, though. And so there's, nothing to take away from KJ Jefferson and the offense's performance. I don't think LSU plays defense right now the way teams expect LSU to play defense. Their secondary is a mess.
Yeah, and I think just we are accustomed in the SEC to there being one or two teams that are sitting up on that shiny mountain. Usually it's Alabama or LSU from the SEC West. And I don't see a team like that this year. I'm not even sure Georgia is that team over in the East. So there seems to be more, like, for the first time ever, the division leaders in the SEC seem more beatable than they ever have before. And LSU does not look dominant. I agree with you.
I mean, honestly, outside of Mississippi State and Auburn,
easy for you to say.
You could make a case for any of the other five teams about why they'll win the West and why they'll lose the West. There's a lot of parity, I think, this year in the SEC, and the SEC East is always kind of a mixed bag. Tennessee looks great, but do they? It's just nobody's been consistently dominant that you haven't seen that kind of performance yet through week 4 that you would expect to see from one of the teams. That everybody's kind of stubbed their toe a little bit, even though they don't have the losses to show for it. There might be new members of the SEC coming soon. I'll translate to that. Oh, I guess we should. I guess we should talk about A&M Auburn. So we won. We should have won by more. Jimbo couldn't make a tackle even though he was on the field and had the guy dead to rights, which is just weird. There's a great picture out where the entire A&M coaching staff is watching the guy run by Jimbo. Jimbo is still looking the complete opposite way. And I don't know that he's old and decrepit and, dementia. None of that kind of stuff is setting in because he's not that old a guy. But to be that situationally unaware that there is a 19-year-old running back barreling down on you and you're just standing there staring past him on the field of play, make the tackle, Jimbo. That's all I'm asking for. The bigger news out of A&M Auburn
Jimbo
is,
Fisher. You want Jimbo Fisher to start making tackles? That's crazy, but okay.
so it
Not
was
sure
a
that's
punch,
legal.
it was a punch out fumble. Ruben Owens was carrying the ball wrong. He got, I'm sure, extra coaching for it. Popped up straight into an Auburn defender's hands. They ran it back. Jimbo is standing on the field about, I don't know, 4 or 5 yards in, just standing there. And his answer afterwards is, I didn't realize we had fumbled the ball. I was yelling at my quarterback. How do you not? Everybody in the stadium, there are 109,000 people there, saw the ball bounce up into the air, into the guy's hands. Saw him running back. Everybody but Jimbo. It's concerning. The bigger news is, yeah, we won, but it was kind of a won the battle, lost the war thing, because Connor Wegman went out in the second half with an ankle injury that turned out to be a broken bone in his foot, potentially. That means he's out for the year. This is not just me hyping up an A&M quarterback, because I know I might have been guilty of that in the past, but Connor Wegman is at a different level than a lot of the SEC quarterbacks this year. And this is a big blow to not only this season, but the A&M program, because he's a guy who's going to lose a year of development. There's a lot of good things set up for A&M next year, provided we can hold on and win some games this year. And Connor Wegman going through the gauntlet for a full season this year was a big key to that. So that's a setback for us. It's also just a setback for football, because the quarterback play in the SEC this year has been kind of god-awful, with a few exceptions. And so having a guy that, even in the loss to Miami, didn't back down, didn't lose, made good decisions, was able to still throw for 3 touchdowns, even though he's being blitzed at a higher rate than any quarterback in the SEC. He's a very, very good player, and he should be a high round draft pick, provided he can stay healthy. So there's a Poller over the rest of the season in College Station this year.
Yeah, I think you're in a decent situation with Max Johnson stepping in, because he has SEC experience there from LSU, and winning SEC experience. He's also the son of a former NFL quarterback, Brad Johnson.
Because he just stood there.
Because he just stood there, right? And so all he's got to do is teach his son, just stand there and win games, son. It's easy. Just stand there and win games.
Just stand there and let your defense win games, son.
I do think that Max Johnson's legs are when his legs are moving, his throws are accurate. When he has to be forced to stay in the pocket and overthink things, that's when he'll make mistakes. Wegman absolutely is a great talent, and he's a loss to A&M. I wish he was there, because I kind of want to play teams' best players. And I don't think that his loss will make a bit of difference on this weekend's outcome. So it's a big loss for A&M. It's a big loss for the kid. I hope he heals good. The great thing is, it's not a huge, like a gigantic rehab, right? It's not like he had knee surgery and he's got to go through all of that to get it. He's got a freaking bone broke in a bad place, right? That's it. So he'll come back.
Well, and I again, not a doctor. Some of the things I've read, and I know it's a lot of internet speculation, is that it's a particular talus bone in the foot that doesn't get a lot of blood flow just by nature, and so there's not a easy healing process. And it even on the best case, it's 3.5 months to rehab that. Worst case, it's a year. I don't think it's a year, but he's basically got to stay off of it. There is no coming back this year.
Well, coming back from not this year, but I mean, as far as his career goes, and
it's
not like he blew his Achilles and he's Aaron Rodgers.
You would like
and we'll
to
never
see him. You would like to see him heal up well enough to participate in spring football.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, absolutely agree.
So news broke yesterday. Changing topics just a little bit. News broke yesterday that the SEC, who is happy at 16 teams and doesn't need to add any more teams, maybe adding some more teams.
Define happy.
A athletic department official from the Clemson University in South Carolina has stated that there will be news coming soon, and just you wait. And the scuttlebutt is that Clemson has somehow found their way out of the grant of rights that the ACC holds over their teams till 2036, I
Whoa,
believe.
yeah.
And so if they found an out, and the out may very well be adding a team like SMU to the program, frankly, Clemson may be on the move. And the thought process is that you're already in South Carolina. Why not just come on over to the SEC? Maybe bring some friends. When does this stop?
It stops when we have one 32-team super conference divided into 4 divisions.
Do you think
32 or 60?
Yeah, 32
Yeah.
or 64, and and college football separates from the NCAA, and they are their own thing. That's when it stops.
You know, all 3 of us are going to be in the same division, probably with some other Southwest Conference team, right? That that's what it's going to end up.
Yeah, we're going to end up being the Southwest Division of the SEC.
The more things change. What's the motivation for Clemson at this point? I know money is the big factor, but if you're Clemson, you also have a fairly easier path to the playoffs. We're moving into a situation next year where the conference champion is guaranteed a spot in the playoffs for the ACC. And so why move to the SEC? I know money's the answer, but why move to the SEC where you are now one of potentially 20 incredible programs?
Well,
19 in Vanderbilt.
I'm going to jump in front of Scott and say, well, it's the same question I've been asking myself about the hat that I'm wearing right now. Like, Texas is literally in the same spot where if you take money out of it, they're removing themselves an easier path to the national championship by moving from the Big 12 to the SEC. So I don't know that it goes beyond money.
But you've added BYU, Jim. It's very impressive. And
UCF and Big White and Cincinnati. Once you've gone Bearcat, you never go back.
And we probably should mention U of H, and they're top of mind since my car was broken into this morning. I don't think those two things are related, but I don't think they're not.
Okay, well, and I'll do my brain reset that goes away from your. I'm so sorry that your car was broken into, Andy. I felt like the need to.
Nothing of value in my car except they got some 2-year-old prescription sunglasses. So good luck to them, because once they put them on, they're going to have a headache.
Unless they also have the same prescription you have,
If
in which case they're going to be like, "Oh my God."
eyes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, I look. I do think. I think it's obviously money, right? Money is obviously the driving factor here, but I also think there's writing on the wall down the line. Big Ten is already making a move to expand to 20, 24. Good Lord knows how big they're going to get. SEC's at 16. Well, they're going to have to grow to stay that way. From an SEC standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world at this point to get Clemson, to get other teams in the region, because then if you remain a regional conference, you're going to have a leg up in recruiting over the Big Ten, who, it's tough to go into the room at a guy's parents in Pennsylvania and get them excited about watching their son play USC and UCLA. That's not as much there. But if you're Clemson and you're recruiting and, hey, yeah, mom and dad, we play Georgia, we play South Carolina, we play Florida, we play Tennessee, you can go to all of these games. So it makes sense in that way. And I'm not sure the ACC, as Jim talks about the 64 or 32 team major thing, I don't know how much of the ACC winds up in that, to be completely honest with you, because things have shifted in the last year or two, and the ACC, by sitting still, has fallen behind. And really what they needed, they put so much of their time and effort into trying to get Notre Dame to really commit. And Notre Dame's as committed as far as they will.
Yeah, they're just not that.
Right, but if Notre Dame pulls out, the whole thing falls apart for the ACC, in my opinion, especially if Clemson goes. And hopefully Notre Dame, I know it's a Catholic school, but hopefully
that's their only choice, is the rhythm they're pulling out. We can't
that's it.
On them.
They've got to pull out. They've got to pull out.
It's the rhythm method or pulling out, baby. That's it.
I am certain that Notre Dame will find a rhythm. They'll prey on it. There'll be a lot of good things. But I will say this for Notre Dame, like all Catholic institutions, they are going to be very good at committing, even when they really, really shouldn't anymore. They're going to stick to their stories and go straight forward. Damn the hatches.
Well, after last week when Ohio State really just rammed it in and punched them hard while they were kind of short there on the field, then once Ohio State just jammed that over the goal line and punched it in when Notre Dame didn't want them to, and really forcefully penetrated that line of scrimmage, and won the game after that. It's really a matter of time now, in my opinion, until Notre Dame at least pulls out of the national championship picture.
I really wish you had beat BYU. I'm glad Texas plays them in a couple weeks because I have a whole line of Mormon jokes around the same kind of concept. So we have that to look forward to.
Yeah, they're great. They traveled great. They're great fans to have in town from everything I've heard, but we can still make some jokes.
And Notre Dame only had 10 men on the field. There's a joke there too for both.
Absolutely.
2 plays.
A little short.
Why did you leave me in my moment of need?
I didn't. I was your 11th man.
Seriously, hey guys, help yourself. Where's your safety? That's what I need to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Do I look like I can play safety?
Yes, Jesus could play a safety and he could hit a curveball. Don't question it.
He was a relief pitcher. Jesus saves.
All right. So I think we beat that horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where else to go with that.
No, I think you're right.
No,
I think you're right about the ACC because there are probably 4 to 6 programs out of what do they have? 14 teams right now that are attractive. And then you've got some kind of, I don't know what to do with it. Wake Forest is a great example of they're a name kind of, but they're not really competitive historically in football. Nobody outside of a small sphere, nobody really cares about college baseball. I think that's going to change over the next decade or so, but it's not something that saves your athletic program. And basketball has always been very hit or miss, even with their very prime location. But I think they live a lot off of, we get to play UNC and we get to play Duke and we get to play NC State every year versus actually being a good program.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, frankly, the Big Ten had that problem too before they went out and got UCLA and USC, because it was Ohio State, Michigan, some years Michigan State, and some years Penn State, and then a lot of mid kind of level teams, some of which we have historical value on, but not a lot of why do I want to see this team playing Alabama every year kind of stuff. That's where it gets interesting to me, because I think the ACC gets cannibalized at some point, but I only think 5 or 6 of those teams actually have homes, and then you're looking at a 2018 Big 12, which is basically going to be tier 2 of college football.
And whenever we see the really big shift, I only see maybe 2 or 3 teams from the current Big 12, not counting Oklahoma and Texas, that are attractive. Tech, Oklahoma State, and maybe one I'm forgetting.
I mean, that's only if T-Boon's Pickens relatives decide to start donating money to Oklahoma State again, because they're in it right now. So I guess more to come on that. The date I've heard is kind of October 10th. I know you can't put a date on these kind of announcements, but I think more news is coming, and I think you're going to see maybe 4 more teams bolting, counting Clemson, and a lot of scuttlebutt about who that's going to be. My guess is kind of one of FSU and Miami out of Florida to the SEC, Clemson, somebody out of North Carolina, because the SEC wants that state. And so you could look at UNC or NC State. And in a lot of ways, UNC is certainly the more valuable product. NC State is a better football program from a support standpoint, from a game environment standpoint, from a fitting in with the SEC kind of standpoint. I don't know if that even matters anymore, because they've kind of abandoned that. But if you're talking about drawing a crowd and having a stadium that's rowdy and into the game, NC State's probably a better fit. Same with Virginia and Virginia Tech. So I think one other team comes out of that state. Virginia Tech, to me, is a very SEC-esque school. Virginia is not. Does the SEC want a better basketball presence? Maybe that makes a difference. I don't know. But I guess we'll see in a couple of weeks.
So I think what's interesting here too, and you touched on it at first when we were talking about Clemson, is them getting out of the grants, right? The right of grants or whatever it's called. If they found something that will allow them out, right, that allows Clemson out, to your point, that's one thing. But if they found something that would allow all members out, you're about to see the cannibalism that you just talked about. First thing, I know that, the 3 of us chatted about this last night just for a minute, but we're all of an agreement, right? Clemson doesn't come alone. There are more that are coming with Clemson, right? Now it's just a matter of finding out, is it 3 others, right? Is it 4 teams? Or let's think about this as well. The SEC historically has been the team that's been out in front of all of these changes. And they really weren't this time. The Big Ten really got out front and expanded big. I kind of wanted to ask you guys what you think. Does the SEC go get like 8 more teams? Turn this into a 24-team league? Let's just show you boys how it's done and do that straight up from right here. Do they go that way?
At this point, anything's possible. Like, I honestly, I'm not trying to be like coy, but
No.
I kind of I thought they were done 3 weeks ago. So it seems like that's the direction.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. My problem with 8 is I don't know that there are 8 programs that the SEC would just take at face value. This isn't Texas and Oklahoma where that's a very obvious, despite what A&M fans may feel about gentlemen's handshake agreements and all that kind of bullshit. There's a very direct benefit to your conference about adding a Texas and an Oklahoma. And there's certainly some schools that are out there available potentially that have that kind of cachet, maybe not to that extent, but FSU is one of those teams that you would go, yeah, absolutely, would want them in our conference. The list is pretty short, though. I don't know if you have 8 teams out there unless you're just trying to get to a number. And when you get to a number, that's how Baylor ends up in a conference. They're way down the list. But I mean, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, ultimately, it's going to be Big Ten. And that's the other part of it about for me to keep the SEC from just going to 28 right now is that the Big Ten wants some of these schools too. They want to be in North Carolina. They want to be in Virginia. They
want Notre Dame.
Yeah, and they are of the opinion that they should absolutely have the big schools in those states. So we should have Virginia and we should have UNC. And I don't know that those schools disagree with that. I think there is a certain amount of there's less pressure playing in the Big Ten, frankly, as a football school than there is in the SEC, unless you are Ohio State or Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I said 8, Andy, is because, as we talk about this, if you're changing conference affiliation, it's not only football, right? You're changing other things. The UNC Duke tie-in with basketball is the same as Michigan, Ohio State, or Texas, Oklahoma. And I think those are ties that people try to keep together. And so I was doing math, right? You got Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and then NC State, NC, and Duke. Those came up to 8. And that's why in my brain, I was like, that's a huge change. But that actually, to me, I could see the benefit of bringing all that over it and keeping those historical rivalries.
Yep, and I don't think we know what the SEC wants to do, frankly. Do they want to be known as a better basketball conference? If so, it's a no-brainer to start really pursuing all of those North Carolina teams.
They're all good baseball schools, too. Every one of them I mentioned.
I think the SEC is in a unique place about college baseball. It doesn't make money for most schools. LSU, Texas, Arkansas, those are probably some A&M. Those are some exceptions to that. By and large, it is a spring sport that very few teams pay attention to. With the contraction of minor league baseball, which you could talk about on any of our other shows, I think the emphasis on college baseball is going to be better and the talent's going to be better. And so people will start caring more, but it reflects in the size of the stadiums. Most of the stadiums in college seat 5,000 to 7,000 people. That's the level of interest. Until there's a big TV contract, there's not going to be that's not going to move the needle for conference realignment. We've got about 10 more minutes. I want to talk about the games this weekend. I want to start with Jim. I wasn't completely serious, but you played Alabama, you played them well. This is probably your next best opponent so far on your schedule, playing the Kansas Jayhawks in Austin. They come in ranked. They've got a pretty good quarterback who is healthy. Is this a game that the Texas Longhorns are worried about at all? Or is it
because Kansas beat them last year. I mean, I think
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So yeah. I think it's how about this? There's no Kansas sneaking up on them again. They are definitely aware that they're coming. I mean, Kansas is a good football team. Texas is still a 17-point favorite. That feels right to me as far as how I think the game will end up. But I don't think that they are going, this is the same old Kansas. Although I do remember when they had the big, heavy coach, some of the the Hellraisers ordered pizzas to the sideline for him, and it was pretty funny. I was there.
Mangino.
Yeah, pretty funny.
And he
What-
ate every one.
Yeah. What are the if I'm the Kansas coach, if I'm Jalen Daniels, the quarterback, what are the things in the Texas defense that I could attack? Where are the weaknesses in the Texas defense from your perspective, Jim? Are they susceptible to the run, susceptible to the pass?
Really, they've not shown to be susceptible to anything so far.
Okay.
They're getting after the quarterback. They are doing a really good job of controlling the running game. I thought I know you didn't ask about offense, but one of the things about the Wyoming game that I was really impressed by was the original plan of attack wasn't working. So then they just started pounding the ball inside the tackles. And I thought that was a really smart adjustment. Like, obviously any team can be had, but the defense is really, really strong and it's really, really stacked.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that your program needed to see from Sark this year, because there were a number of times last year when he could have and should have run the ball and he chose not to. With Bijan Johnson on your
the best
roster.
running back in college football.
Yeah, how many times did we hear Jim just give the ball to Bijan?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was frustrating just as somebody who wanted to watch college football, going, why? Even all right, you don't want to run Bijan, great, run Roshan.
Yeah, but to say, yeah, you have lots of weird sounding names.
You've got a first round draft pick and a fourth round draft pick. They're ready to run the ball. We want to pass to the flats
with Hudson Card.
Fun.
I will say this: if you look at this game, I think we know who Texas. I have a really good idea of who the Texas football team is at this point, right? The strong defense, Quinn Ewers, the run game, the receivers. I pretty much know who Texas is, and that's why they're 17-point favorites. I'm not quite sure who Kansas is yet, but I do know that Kansas has the most experienced and probably most talented quarterback that Texas has seen yet, which is a shock definitely. When you played Alabama, right? Already, but a different situation. Given the history, Kansas doesn't come into Austin scared. We just touched on that. I think it's a really good test. I believe that Texas has done enough to earn their ranking, and I believe that Texas will probably wind up in the playoff. If they can get past Oklahoma next week, it looks really smooth for quite a while after that, in my opinion. But I'm not sure who Kansas is yet. They've done enough to earn the number 24 spot.
Yeah.
But is that their ceiling? Are they a top 10 team? I honestly
if you
don't
have a
know.
Good dynamic quarterback, your ceiling can be much higher than 24.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
That's
transitive property wise, they did beat you, Scott. I mean, just
who beat us?
Kansas. I mean, transitive property wise, if you believe in the transitive property football,
they beat BYU, Kansas in the Liberty Bowl last year, and
but they
bowl
beat
games
BYU
count.
last week. You lost to BYU the week before.
Yeah, but
so facto.
No, heads up. We beat them in Memphis, and any win in Memphis counts as a 0.2 extra. I don't know. Just gonna say count that. That's the way we do math. I don't know about everybody else.
And I hope you still have your wheels on your car after you've left Memphis. That's also a thing.
Yeah, and I hope our quarterback still has a truck that hasn't been burned to the ground, because in Fayetteville, if you don't play well, apparently sometimes that's a thing too. Sorry, Brandon Allen.
No,
that might be taking it a scotch too seriously.
Look, guys, Arkansas fans are I mean, they are the most quick to just the silly craziness. Sam Pittman's deleted his Twitter account because because they're threatening him and his players and calling for him to be fired. And you got a punter from Australia who's walking in going, "Whoa, what's all this crap about?" The guy's in tears and stuff like that. We are also the program who flew planes overhead demanding Houston not to be fired in 2007. And most people look back and go, yeah, that was completely validated why we flew the planes above state. That is the insanity of the Arkansas fan base.
Psychopaths can always justify their behavior. That's why they're psychopaths.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of psychopaths, I feel like the other game that we need to talk about real briefly here, neither host on this show thinks their team is going to win. So that'll be interesting because I will say, I said it once already, there's a lot of A&M fans that are scared that KJ Jefferson's going to go off based on what they saw against LSU. Again, some of that is not understanding who LSU this is, but KJ Jefferson's a fourth-year senior? No,
I
I'm
think
sorry,
he's
he has like
a ninth year senior. He's a ninth
something
year
like
senior.
that. He's been there a long time.
He's 32
Always-
years old, man. Come on.
Almost always good offensive line play. If our defense doesn't come to play, there is a big fear that Jefferson's going to pick us apart. I don't know what we're going to get with Max Johnson. Max Johnson did beat Arkansas last year, although you could also say the goalpost beat Arkansas last year. There was a little bit of oink doink action. And there's always something weird in this game. The fact that it's being played at 11 in the morning is going to make it probably, I'm guessing, pretty sleepy for the first half. Both these teams are the kind of team that will wake up in the second half. The other storyline is the offensive coordinator, as we've mentioned a couple times in the show for A&M, is the former head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks, who left under less than ideal circumstances. I don't know what I'm going to see this weekend against Arkansas. I hope that we win. If we lost by 2 touchdowns, it wouldn't surprise me.
Let me just give some words of advice to every Arkansas fan that's watching this or listening to this. It doesn't matter. Arkansas can look back at this A&M series in Dallas, and on more than 2 or 3 occasions, Arkansas fans can look at that and go, we gave that game away. We absolutely just shit the bed and gave the game to A&M. In that same time, I can't look at one time that A&M's done that against us. Okay. So I have historical reference that we're going to shit the bed in Dallas again. I also look at this further, and I look at Bobby Petrino, who came in with a Missouri State team last year that wasn't nearly as talented as Arkansas, and scared them and terrified them until late in the fourth quarter with a Missouri State team. So if he can do that with that talent, then what can he do with A&M talent? I saw what he did with Arkansas talent when he showed up, and he made the team bowl eligible in short fashion. So I have no reason to believe why Arkansas can win this game. And after the way Arkansas has performed at this point, I have no reason to believe that I can tell you which Arkansas team is going to show up.
I mean, I'm in the same boat. And it's not that A&M's been inconsistent. It's just we still don't know who we are. And you add in the X factor of a new quarterback. Even if there's some thought that Petrino might be better with a Max Johnson who doesn't have all the tools that Connor Wegman has than he has been. I mean, he made Ryan Mallett look like a competent quarterback, and that's not proved in the NFL. That wasn't an easy thing to do.
He couldn't wake up. He couldn't get up for his alarm. Ryan Mallett, rest in peace.
It'll be interesting because there's revenge factors on both sides. It was a heartbreaking loss for Arkansas last year. It was like one of the last positive things to happen to A&M last year. And I think this is the last year of playing this horrible game in Dallas. I think next year we're on campus, which this game should be. Having said that, I'm picking Arkansas by 7. I know the line does not reflect that, and you shouldn't ever base betting. You're betting on anything, I think, when it comes to sports, but that's kind of where I am.
I'm hoping Arkansas by 50. I'm thinking A&M. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, I think as a neutral observer at the beginning of the season, I had A&M in this game, but I think the quarterback's the difference. I think Arkansas pulls it out.
Yeah, it's just anything.
They're not even Catholic.
Well, there's a few.
And we're back, everyone.
There's a few there's a few Catholics there. Yeah, I will say I'm sad because I've got some other commitments, and I'm not going to be able to watch that game. I'm not going to be in a position to sit down and watch anything till about 4 or 5. So I will be tape delayed and off of all social media until about 8 o'clock tomorrow night.
All right, so all my texts will only be automatopoeia, and you'll just have to guess what's going on from there.
What's going on? Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine.
All right, I know we're up against it. For Jim, for Scott, for myself, this is Yell Fight Sooie. Have a great football weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next Friday.